Welcome back. We've talked about how wind and rain storm mineral can stand up to the weather and how you can add fly control to the mix of your mineral program. And Dr. Cosby, it looks like the rain has finally quit there in Mexico, Missouri, and we've come out to check our mineral feeders, and what do we find?
Well, as you can see, there is quite a bit of difference in the amount of water that came through. And so if we try to pour out our conventional mineral after that water is...
Yes, I've had that experience before.
I think a lot of us have.
And that's before 3 days of 90-degree weather.
Right. That's right. And so you can imagine as the sun hits that, what's going to happen to that. And then will the cattle actually want to come up and consume that? And so if we compare that to the wind and rain mineral, you see how that just poured out quite well and stayed loose. As those cows come up, bump it with their nose, it'll fall apart and it'll continue be palatable for those cows. And we'll get our investment back by getting that nutrition into the cattle.
It's an outstanding demonstration. Very, very compelling. So let's talk about placement of the mineral. Not always can we keep it out of the rain, but it is true that the placement of the mineral can impact grazing patterns. Tell us more about that, Dr. Cosby.
Absolutely. For years, of course, cattlemen have known that what really affects distribution is water, of course, Kevin, especially out here in the arid country. But the second thing would be, as cattlemen would say, salt. And of course, we're talking about complete mineral programs here, and where we place those mineral feeders within our pasture can draw cows to maybe some underutilized areas of those pastures and impact the grazing distribution and nutrition to our cow herd.
How do you use that from a practical perspective, Harry, in your operation?
We definitely do. We're predominantly a south wind summer kind of area. So the cattle tend to graze into the south end of the pastures. We try to move most of our feeders away from the water and into the north end of the pastures if it permits, and spread the cattle to grazing out for that kind of situation.
So, Sarah, tell us, what if a producer says, yeah, this is fine, but not only do I have to buy a mineral, but I have to buy a mineral feeder? What do you tell them?
Well, we do have a solution for that. We have a wind and rain storm formula mineral tub. And it's actually the best form of weatherized mineral we can possibly manufacture.
Wow.
It comes in a 225-pound tub, and they place it just like they would our loose mineral products. And we actually see phenomenal, particularly fly control, alticid delivery through the tubs from a consistent intake standpoint.
It's a great example. And let's talk consumption once again. I know you're passionate about that topic. How do we track and measure whether the cattle are getting the right amount of mineral?
Well, Kevin, I tell you what, I recommend that my producers have a diary, a log, or some kind of calendar in the truck with them, and really mark how much mineral they put out in a pasture. They know how many cows are in there, and hopefully they're checking these cows every 3, 4, 5 days, and they come back and they're out, or they have a lot left, and we can work together with our dealers and myself to calculate intake. Basically, number of cows divided by how much pounds they put out over how many days they put it out. So 50 cows, they ought to be putting a bag of mineral out about every 4 to 5 days.
Even us CSU grads can figure that out. All right. Now, what about those times when cattle are either over-consuming or under-consuming mineral? What should we be doing in those periods?
Well, to me, that also becomes a placement issue, and we move mineral feeders or the tubs around. That's handy about the tubs. They're easier to move around, but we either move it closer to the water or closer to the loafing area if we're not getting enough consumption, and vice versa. We move it away from those familiar or comfortable areas for the cows if they're eating too much.
Dr. Cosby, let's talk cost for a minute, because as cow-calf producers, we're always trying to manage the cost of our operation. What should our consideration set be as we evaluate the cost versus the value of a mineral program?
Absolutely, and when we think about cost, we're thinking, our mind goes to the cost of the mineral, and what if they're over-consuming? And certainly that is a cost, and we recognize that, and why monitoring intake, as Sarah mentioned, is so critically important to make sure we're investing those dollars wisely. Underconsumption can be just as costly, but those are the things that are tougher to measure. Maybe it's a few cows that got bred, but maybe a cycle later than what they could have. A little lower milk production in terms of what that means to weaning weight. So there are costs, both over and under consumption, and that's why we focus so much time on consistent consumption with the wind and rain minerals.
Sometimes we only think about cost in terms of the things we write check for, not the things that we don't get a check from. Right?
Cost.
It's a great point. Thanks so much for your perspective. We'll have more insights from our panel of experts right after this. Stay with us.